Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Goldman, the director of Burbank Public Library, and I would like to welcome all of you in our audience to tonight's event, Color Changes Everything. This is the final event in the 2020 Burbank Reads series, which has run over the course of the month of October with programs for all ages. As some of you may know, Burbank Reads is a program that has returned this year after a hiatus of several years. After witnessing the events of the past several months, we at the library took a look internally and externally at what we could do to respond to these challenging questions about American life and the legacy of our history. Recognizing the privilege we have as an institution, we decided to bring back Burbank Reads, which encourages the community to read the same title and, through the shared act of reading, come together to discuss difficult topics. Burbank Reads this year is focused on racial equity and the Black experience, and we hope we have helped our community learn and come together to share, engage, and develop ideas for improving Burbank and making it a more equitable place. Thank you again to all of you for participating this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to our librarian, Hubert Kozak, to introduce tonight's panel.
Welcome to tonight's program, part of the 2020 Burbank Reads series. Tonight's offering is Color Changes Everything, Racial Diversity in Animation, featuring Lucey Brooker, Reeves, Chi Ogboy, and David Dodds. Burbank Reads is a program inspired by the idea that the shared act of reading can bring the community together. Everyone in the community is encouraged to read the same book and participate in the discussion and learning surrounding the subject matter. Our main title is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. We have print and ebook copies available through our library website, burbanklibrary.org, and we hope you'll check it out. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so we can all enjoy this program online. You should see our speakers on the screen. As audience members, you will not be able to speak, but you'll see a question and answer button at the bottom of the middle of your screen. Throughout the program, you're welcome to type questions in there. Our moderator will curate the questions and we'll try to get as many of them answered as we can. When you leave the program, you will be redirected to an evaluation form, and we would greatly appreciate if you could fill that out to help us improve our programs in the future. We'd like to thank the Friends of the Burbank Public Library for their sponsorship of this program. Our panel moderator, Musa Brooker, is a Los Angeles-based director, animator, writer, and producer. A Philadelphia native, he holds the Masters of Fine Art in Experimental Animation from the California Institute of the Arts, where he was a Jacob K. Javits Fellow. Musa recently joined the award-winning animation studio 6 Point Harness, where he serves as a creative director. Since 2010, he has been on the faculty at USC School of Cinematic Arts in the John C. Hench Division of Animation and Digital Arts. I'm now going to turn this over to him. He'll introduce you to our panelists.
Thank you so much, Hubert. Thank you all. I can't see you, but thank you all for for coming tonight. I think this is going to be an engaging and exciting conversation. It's absolutely my pleasure to moderate. And without further ado, I know we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let me introduce our panelists. First up is David Dodds, who's an animator and educator. Welcome so much, David. Next up, we have Chi Ogboy, who is an associate producer, writer, and director, and works for doing promotional content for Disney Channel Worldwide. And last but certainly not least, we have Reeves, who is an animator and director and a compositor as well. Who juggles work between in the industry and her own personal projects. So thank you all for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Musa.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Absolutely. It's great to see you all. I'm so glad that we have the technology that allows us to do this kind of virtual conversation. So I wanted to start off, and I'll open this up to all of you. If you could tell me just a little bit about, a little bit more, I've given a little bit of an introduction, but if you guys could tell me a little bit more about what it is that you do in the world of animation specifically, maybe what your day-to-day is like, and a little bit about how you got into the world of animation. And David, why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is David Dodds. I love animation, and it started when I'm from Kansas City, and I started as a little kid. I loved to draw. I loved art. And that really started my journey of figuring out, what do I really want to do with this? So I teach animation at UCLA. And I also teach it sometimes at USC. I do workshops there, and I'm also an Adobe education leader. So I get to, go around the world and speak about animation and teach animation to people that are excited and want to learn about animation. So that's really what I feel like that's my real passion, is helping other people reach their creative potential. That's my real purpose for being on the planet. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I do.
That's great. That's great. We'll have to get into that a little bit more. Caress, why don't you share with us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So like many animators, I grew up loving animation and obsessively watching Disney movies, but also grew up during like the beginning of the internet age. So I had a lot of online friends. And one of my friends, she was in high school and she said she was going to do animation as a career. And I decided in middle school, oh, that's what I'm going to do, not really knowing what that would entail. But I attended Pomona College, and there I studied the history of Black representations. And I sort of brought that same interest in Black representations to animation when I attended the USC Graduate Animation School, Dada Hench. And I continued to focus on Black representations. And while at USC, I was awarded the Annenberg Fellowship, which allowed me to basically expand my research and focus on it more while at USC. And interestingly, when I graduated, I kind of fell into compositing work, specifically for stop motion. And Musa actually gave me some of my earliest work in my animation career. He's been great at recommending me for a lot of stuff. And yeah, between that and sort of continuing my interest in Black representations and applying it to my more independent work and freelance work, that sort of summarizes my own like history as to how I came to be here today.
Great, thank you so much. And how about you? Tell us a little bit about your story.
So I'm not as cool as Caress or David. I'm not an animator. However, I do have a keen interest in animation. Since I've been young, I've always, SpongeBob has always been on in my house, or I have Fairly Odd Parents or Phineas and Ferb. And I just knew just in my career that I wanted to do something that correlated with that. And I'm just so grateful that I'm at the Disney Channel, because although I'm not as talented as an animator, I get to take our IP and be able to market it to kids, and figure out a way for kids to see a way our stories being translated and actually gravitate towards it. So that's really cool to me.
Absolutely. I think it's actually really valuable, even though that you're not an animator, that you're on the panel, because I think sometimes people that younger people or people who may not know a whole lot about the industry, a lot of what we know about before you start working as a professional is animators and maybe directors. But there is a whole world of interlocking disciplines that it takes to create animated productions. And so I think I would hesitate to say that you're not as talented, because clearly you're talented, but it's great that you have another talent that found its way into animation. So that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk a little bit about diversity in animation and the African American experience in animation. So I'm curious if some of you touched on this a little bit in your introduction. were there any particular films or any particular television shows that really inspired you when you were growing up? And did any of those projects have African American characters or black characters? And I'll open that up to anyone.
Yeah, I just want to say, I remember watching Bebe's Kids when I was really young. And I mean, it was funny, but I just love how I got older. The jokes that went over my head really landed. But I was just really mystified by this idea of an animated film having like an entirely Black main cast, because at least while growing up, there wasn't a lot of media out that had that available for me. So that was definitely like a definitive film for me as a young child interested in animation. I was like, whoa, Black people can be animated too.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film. Director Bruce Smith did a wonderful job with that.
Mhm.
Yeah. David, how about you?
Oh, there's so much. I just love. Okay, so you said about Black. Okay, so yes, there was the Jackson 5 actually had a cartoon.
Mhm.
Jackson 5 had a cartoon. Shay, I don't know. I see Michael on the wall there. I'm gonna do that, but and by the way, look, I did a little animated short Michael Jackson. Love the Jackson 5s. Yeah, but then of course there's like what was it? Hey. What was that? Fat Albert.
Fat
Was
Albert.
another one. And I know Cosby had there was also a show with Cosby. That was one. So there were sprinkles, I call them sprinkles. And we can get into much more of that if you guys want to, but I felt that there wasn't, I would say more often than not, I had to imagine myself in the white characters that I saw. I had to imagine that that's me.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely had that same experience. And I don't know if you like have a corollary experience to this, but while growing up, Princess Jasmine was like the designated like Black girl kind of conduit. While growing up, it's like, oh, that's our Black Disney princess. It's Jasmine, which is bizarre thinking back on it. But yeah, it makes sense because it's like you attach to what's available. Yeah, to you.
Yeah. And when you look back, when I go back and watch those things, I can remember what I was thinking. And so that lets me remember, oh yeah, I didn't have that show that, that I could just say those people really represented me. There were some, like I said, there were sprinkles, there were shows, but it still isn't like a norm or a default that there's going to be Black characters. I will say that just talking about what influenced me, I love Jim Henson. So I love Sesame Street, and there were, they had different colors. They were like blue and yellow and purple and all these different colors. So I felt like they were trying to show, inclusivity, but I still marvel at what Jim Henson did. And it's like, it's not animation, but it really inspired me. He was very inspirational for me.
Well, it's interesting characters, visually appealing characters, told in interesting stories, and I think that very much relates to animation. Obviously, it's a slightly different discipline, but
I think all art is like that. I think it doesn't matter. It can be a painter. Basquiat I was very influenced by Basquiat, and I never painted like that. So I think good art really transcends that, and it can inspire you. It definitely inspired me.
Absolutely. And I think, I want to throw the same question to you, Chi, but I do want to add, I think that when you have interesting stories and when you have interesting characters and the specifics of those characters, they can become universal. And I think that's something that we can certainly talk about. But, when you have a character, if it's well told, if it's interesting, if it's an interesting story, it doesn't matter the race, religion of that character, because you're sucked into the story. And I think I think that's something that we can use and push for, to bring more diverse characters into the marketplace, because like you said, it's easy to relate to a character, or you always look to relate to a character that's in front of you that you enjoy seeing. And so it's a natural thing to sort of place yourself in there. It helps even more when that character looks like you. But if the story is well told and the character is interesting and engaging, anyone can relate to that. So Chi, please share with us your thoughts about any particular characters or shows that had Black characters, or
I think it's so funny because for me, when I was younger, I used to watch the show Little Bill. And like when I watched the show Little Bill, I was just a little kid just watching the show. I didn't really think anything of it. But like when you look back, it's kind of like, why did I like Little Bill? It's because like I look at him and he's a little Black kid and he just wants to explore the world. He doesn't really know what's going on, but like he just is looking at everything with an optimistic eye. And like that's how I was as a little Black kid as well. I feel like I didn't know what was going on, but I was just happy about everything and just wanted to explore the world, you know? So
Absolutely.
I think a show like Little Bill definitely had an impact on me. The Proud Family as well at the Disney Channel. I think that had an impact on me. Like that's really cool seeing like a Black sitcom that's animated on television. And it was done so well. So those two really had a direct impact on me, the Black animated shows that were great. They had an impact on me.
Yeah. No, and both the Proud Family and Baby's Kids, directed by Bruce Smith. For me, I know for me personally, Fat Albert was something that I always saw. As much as I enjoy it sort of even more now, as a kid, I always was a little bit like, oh, I got to learn a lesson from this. Because there's always a lesson at the end of Fat Albert. But that definitely was a touchstone for me, because that came on, I think I'm a little bit older than all of you. So I grew up in the era of Saturday morning for sure. And so that was usually at the end of Saturday morning when Fat Albert came on. And that song is just locked in, I think, to a lot of people's memories. So, moving from things that influenced you, that you grew up with, maybe you guys could speak about Black representation currently in the animation field of characters on screen, and speak a little bit about what it's like for you as a professional in the field, as far as representation behind the camera, and what that experience has been like for you. Chi, why don't we start with you? Oh, I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Nope. Go ahead. Who did you want to start? It's okay.
It's perfectly fine. Jump on in. Yeah. We'll all have time to talk.
I just overall feel as a big consumer of media, like I watch a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, a lot of animated content. I would just say across the board, there's not enough representation. Across the board, I'm talking about films too. I'm talking about just films. To be able to see Black people in full range of dimension. I'm not talking about just you're a thug or you have to have this particular, I'm talking about the full range. And when I see that, it's such a breath of fresh air. It's like, wow, I've been thirsty for that. Regina King did an amazing job in Watchmen. And I was like, I have never, ever seen that performance in my life. I was like, you go, girl, get that Emmy, get that Emmy. She deserved it. It was groundbreaking. I'd never seen it before. So across the board, I feel, especially with animation, I did like the Spider-Man Into the U-verse. That was a refreshing change. That was really nice, really well done. One of my favorite current animation series that I've seen. But I would just say overall, like across the board, it's almost like I've seen it so much. It's always been there where there's just not enough representation that for so long I've just accepted it. But, recently I feel like, no, like I want to see, I don't want to have to imagine that these characters I don't want to have to, you know what I mean? I want there to be a fuller representation. And I'll just say this for Black women, oh my gosh, we really need to get on that. Like, it's just like, why? Like, why aren't the Black women represented enough across the board, just across the board? Anyway, I'll stop.
It's a good question. Well, as a Black woman, why don't you jump in, Caress?
That's just what I think of all the time. I'm always thinking about
share
that.
with us, a little bit about your experience. Just tell us a little bit about, how you feel about current representation and maybe some particulars that you've experienced as a Black woman working within the industry.
Right. So I guess for context, I could talk a little bit about my own experiences working in the industry and how I think that might reflect a lack of representation. So the first internship I had was at a large post-production company. And it was my very first internship. And on my first day coming in, my supervisor came up to me laughing like, "Oh, we made a bet in the department that you were Black because of your name." And so that was a really uncomfortable and bizarre sort of like first introduction into entertainment in general for me. And I mean, I work a lot mostly in post-production, which is predominantly white and male. So it's always a little bit uncomfortable being usually not only the only Black person, but like oftentimes one of the few women, period. And so, I mean, in animation, things have slightly improved over the past several years. I think women in animation actually keep really detailed statistics about the increase in women who are working in the industry. I'm not sure if they keep any statistics about race though, but I'd say generally I'm usually the only Black person in the room. Definitely the only Black woman. One time recently at a job, they had hired a Black woman onto the team. And I wasn't the only one who was shocked. Like other white people who worked there, like males were shocked. Like they're looking at me for like, what's going on? And I mean, like, I was just so thrilled, but also just kind of like, wow, this is crazy that this is my reaction, that this situation, that it's so rare that I have to like feel like this is like a special occasion I need to celebrate. So yeah, there's definitely a lack of representation just behind the camera. And I think that definitely, that all feeds into the actual content that's produced too. Because I mean, it's, like where's the idea germinated that there should be like more Black people in being represented? It's like you kind of need Black people around to make that happen, and also to just have a diverse range of Black characters and representations like David was talking about earlier, instead of just a lot of stereotypes. And I've worked on like a show or two where there were like stereotypical animated characters, and it was always a little bit uncomfortable, being like, is the only Black person working on this the voice actor, and me, this is a bit strange. But it's slowly improving in terms of representations. Shows just like Steven Universe, there's a Cartoon Network show out, I forget the name, it's a kid's show, it's about a Black family, it's very wholesome and pure. I think that's been out for at least a year. So it's just like slowly I'm seeing like more like Black and brown people appear in animation, and I definitely think that correlates to their slowly being more of us, starting to work in this industry. One of the shows I worked on where Musa was the animation director, like their parents, and like the mom was a Black woman and the dad is like a white man, and they had like a mixed race child, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And they, it wasn't something that was directly pointed out, it was just like, here's a representation that exists. And it's kind of like, oh, this is like sweet that it's presented in a natural way, so it's things are improving slowly. They definitely need to get better, but I have seen like gradual improvements over time, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I can relate. As I'm sure we all can, to your story there about being the only person of color. I've certainly been on multiple productions where I'm the only person of color, or the only Black person on a production. But I'm hopeful about the future because I do think that it starts with um, people behind the scenes that get to create the shows, make the shows, produce the shows. One of the things that I am so grateful about my experience at 6 Point Harness, there's so many wonderful people that work there, and they've been very welcoming. But it was the first time that I can remember that I got a chance to work with so many Black people. And not even on the same production, just on different productions, and that was incredibly refreshing. And I sort of long for the day when that's not refreshing, where it's normal. So it sounds like you feel the same way. Chi, if you could share with us a little bit about your experience as well.
Well, let me take the character experience first, actually. So I feel like when I grew up, I was watching shows and there was always a sassy Black girl, right? So I watched Jimmy Neutron as a sassy Black girl. Even the live action shows, there was a sassy Black girl. And that was kind of the norm, I felt, like in the early 2000s. However, like now, when you look at a show like Doc McStuffins, that like highlights a Black girl that wants to be a doctor, it's aspirational to young Black girls and just girls out there in general. And that's not just on the Disney front. I mean, just talk about underrepresentation like throughout animation, like even like a Nickelodeon right now, they have Casa Grandes, right? And Cartoon Network right now, they have Victor and Valentina. So I just think there's more of a conservative effort like around the industry right now to tell more diverse stories. Now, from my experience, I'm one of 3 Black producers on my team. And that sometimes is scary, but I understand how hard I work to get to this position. And like, I understand that like, my voice is equally as important as anybody else's voice. And even if others don't think that, I still carry on that way. And like eventually someone's gonna take notice, and people do take notice.
Absolutely. I think, I think that it's important to, that's one of the things about the industry in general, whether you're Black, white, Asian, whatever, it's you have to believe in yourself because people aren't always going to believe in you. But I think it's important to help others and to support others and to help be the change because there has been growth in diverse stories and diverse crew members, but I do think that there's still some ways to go. And from each one of your experiences and my own as well, I can tell you that. So I'm curious, if you guys think, one of the things that I think is important is also it takes a concerted effort. It's not just going to magically happen to get different voices, different stories told. And I'm curious, it's got to be a conscious effort. And sometimes people aren't necessarily willing or don't think about it as being a conscious effort. I'm curious how you guys feel about, again, the current political climate, and do you feel like anything that's going on right now because of events in the wider world are going to, have they affected animation? Will they continue to affect animation, pushing for that change, or how do you guys feel about that?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. I look at what's going on and it just gets me, I get so upset about what has been going on the past year. It just makes me really angry. Not sad, angry. I get very angry about it. And I feel that what I feel the big thing is, it's not about what I need to do. It's what other people, white people on the other side of the camera, need to look within. Go within, go within, look at ourselves. That's the big thing. That is the big thing, is taking that time to really look at the system, systemic racism that's a real thing, to really do that internal work. That's the only way change happens. If not, it's just, let's just put the Black Lives Matter banner out. Let's just apply a little coat of, we are doing the right thing, but nothing changes internally. So it's about doing that internal work that I feel as Black people, we have had to do it for years. We've always had to do that work. We have always had to do the work where we have to try to make other people feel comfortable. We don't want to make people feel nervous. We don't want to rock the boat. Well, that's exhausting. That's exhausting, and it's really tiring. So the flip of that is to see what it's like for now you to have to take that on, for you to do that work, to do the inner work, you know, that is the real, to me, that is the real change. That's the real change. It's not just, let's just throw money at a problem. It's doing that internal work and looking at what, you know, systemic racism really is. There's a book, and I cannot remember the name of it, and it's like, everybody's been reading it. It's a really important book on white privilege. And so that's a really important thing, I think, behind the scenes. Because like you were saying, Caress, like that is how real change happens. It happens from, you know, the people that make the decisions, that actually has the power, you know, to open up, to green light things and to open up doors. So I'm not saying that change hasn't happened and that we haven't had progress. We certainly have. But I think what I have seen is that it's fragile. It is fragile. It's not a guarantee that this change that we have seen is going to continue. So it's very fragile, and it's something that I think that we need to, it's important to look at and keep our eyes on that.
Well, first of all, I want to say David is dropping some truth bombs right now. And I think it's funny, we all sort of laughed at the idea of the exhaustion, because I think that's a very real experience that clearly we've all had, and I think most Black people in America have had. You know, and I don't know how much white people or people of other races or experiences understand that. And so I think it's an important thing to think about, to talk about. I've certainly experienced that in my life. I try to be true to who I am wherever I am, but certainly it is something that comes to the forefront when you're in a room or on a crew with mostly white people, or people that are different than you. So, Caress, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, what W.E.B. Du Bois talks about double consciousness, which is sort of how just about all Black people live under. And working in animation, it is a constant double existence. You know, it's not just that you have to perform well, you have to perform well representing yourself in a specific way. And so there's always in the back of your head the constant stressors and just sort of the things you worry about, where you do something, you're like, oh, could this be interpreted in this way? You know, it's just like, it's a very stressful way to work. And I guess I'm of the opinion that the issue of representation, for lack of a better word, can be solved with just Black infiltration. I don't really put a lot of faith in depending on sort of like the white sort of like patriarchal structure and fixing this. It doesn't necessarily have any reason to invest in it beyond like an economic sense. So I feel like,
but that's maybe the biggest reason to invest in it, is the economic
well,
sense.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely true. But I just mean like just on the ground floor of like, you know, people wanting to see more of this. I'm just of the opinion, just more like Black and brown people, period, just need to get into this industry and just exist.
Good
just
point.
be in these spaces, physically occupy them. And I feel like that's like the only genuine guarantee of change I personally can see. Because yeah, especially earlier this year, I felt more like the Black Lives Matter stance a lot of corporations seem to get behind, felt temporary in a sense, you know, like a fad, you know, like a year from now it'll be something else.
Mm-hmm.
They'll move on from it. But I mean, all I would say still at the same time, a lot of animation companies, particularly the larger ones, do have like diversity programs, which is really important, and it makes a lot of progress. But yeah, I'm definitely of the opinion of like, just get more bodies in, just doing things, just existing and saying things and speaking out. Because at least in my experience, I've just found all of us like being isolated in these environments make it really difficult for us to make a change, and relying on other people to do it is a tricky, kind of dangerous game to play.
Well, I think it's interesting that you talk about relying on other people, because I know personally I'm a firm believer in the idea of, it takes pressure within and pressure without to make the change, and I think there's been this duality of that throughout the history of civil rights and Black Americans in this country, in that sometimes you have to be in the system to change the system, but it also helps to have someone outside of the system making that change. And I think, it can be dicey and tricky to rely on people that may not feel like they have a vested interest in the long term of making that change. But I can tell you just from my own personal experience, I've had allies in my life that really have, sort of opened doors for me and helped me, and then I in turn hope to open doors for other people. And so I think personally, I don't think that there's any one right way to do it. I think it's going to take a concerted effort. I think it's going to take allies. I think it's going to take people standing up and speaking and having conversations like this. And maybe it's a little bit more on self-reliance, but I think there's a role to play for people that are allies and to help make that change.
It absolutely does. It totally takes lots of people, and I think it takes people that the book I was talking about is called White Fragility. It's called White Fragility. That is the book that really breaks it down. It's for people that don't even think that they have any racism at all. Like, I'm liberal, I'm crunchy granola, I am so, but then when you really look at it, see, that's the thing. That is the thing. That is true. It's going within, like really doing that deep inner work. And that's what I feel that has happened with George Floyd and all these other things, is that I feel like it really has made people look deeper at themselves and do that inner work. And I guess we all do. Like, I have, just amongst other Black people, like I've had conversations like this with other Black people, other Black professionals, just talking amongst ourselves and just seeing like, what can we do, and what, and it's interesting, like we have our own issues, like we have our own issues amongst ourselves as Black people. But just, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like this is a real time for people to really look within, and it does take allies. It totally takes, it takes a village. It takes allies. And I think the people that put this panel on, Hubert and Arsene and all of the people, Wynn and all, the Burbank Library, this is a step in that direction. So we need people like that. We need the people that say, you know what, this is an important conversation to have. Because trust me, it is not a conversation that all the libraries across America is like, let's get 4 Black people on a panel and have them talk about racial diversity. It's not a thing.
You're right. But I do agree, and I don't want to dismiss Caress's concern, because I think in the past there has been a tendency to sort of hop on the bandwagon and then hop off when it's no longer convenient or suitable to be an ally or to be a strong supporter of equality or diversity. So I think that's a legitimate concern, and I certainly didn't mean to make it seem as if it wasn't, because I think that's a very real lived experience for lots of people. Chi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, every single job that I've worked, whether it's in entertainment or just a regular job, I've had instances where things didn't go the way that I wanted to go. And when that happened, I wanted to be upset and I wanted to voice my opinion. But somewhere deep down, I'm saying, okay, like, if I'm doing this, and first I always ask the first internal question: is this happening to me right now because I'm Black? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. So then I always
see the collective nods.
And I'm always like, no way, like I'm bugging, you know? So, but like with everything going on right now, like you really take a step back and you wonder like, okay, like, was that because I was Black actually, when you really think about it? Because I think like right now, we've had Barack Obama as president, like Black people are cultural icons like in today's world. And we have a certain level of respect that we didn't have per se in the 60s. So people have this perception that everything is all good, but in reality, there's a whole bunch of closeted racists. I mean,
Absolutely.
Donald Trump was supposed
They're
to
not so closeted anymore.
you know what I mean? But people went on and voted for him in the masses. So like people feel a certain type of way, and just everything going on makes me even more frustrated because it like reaffirms my actual beliefs that like people are like actually racist. Not everybody are good people, and like it makes me upset. It makes me afraid to go outside, and it makes me think not only of my own life, but like I think of my friends' lives. I think of my parents' lives, and it's kind of like, can they go outside and just get shot randomly one day? You know, so I don't know. I think it's super troubling to me. I still try to be optimistic about everything, but it's tough. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to take this time to say, you know, this is a public forum. I encourage all of you, anyone watching, to vote if you're a supporter of diversity and inclusion. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I think, you know, you should vote for people that have the same beliefs that you do and the core beliefs. And if this is something that you support, you should go out and make sure that your voice is heard. I do think that sort of in a similar way that I was talking about within and without, I think, you know, I think that as much as we want to change things about the animation industry, the medium, the art form of animation, can be an agent of change and can enlighten people and inform people and educate people, as well as entertain. You know, it's all. That's one of the things that's so wonderful about this medium. It really is. It can do all sorts of things. So I'm curious about if any of you. I know David, you that's part of your mission, but I'm curious. For all of you, if there are projects you have in mind or things that you hope to do or want to do with projects that can help be part of the change that we seek both within the industry and in the wider world through animation.
Yes, I mean, like you said, that's definitely my mission. I feel like that's my purpose for being on the planet. Like that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help the people that come after me, you know, the younger people that come after me that didn't have a way or didn't see a possibility, that I'm able to help them discover their creative potential. Like that's really what I'm here to do. And so education for me, that's a great platform for that. I mean, I feel it's like, it is such a great feeling to see that little twinkle in someone's eye and see them see something different in a way that they had never thought of it in that way before. So I love doing that. And I feel that that's what I want to do more of. That's my mission for if I have to look 10 years down the road. I just want that platform to grow and to be able to affect more and more people to reach their creative potential. Because I think that's really where, for me at least, that's where it's at, is to get them to, you know, actualize their potential, their creative potential. And so for me, that has to do with, I'm working on a film festival right now. I'm really excited about with Adobe. I'm very happy to say that's another ally. Adobe is a great ally. They're like, yeah, we'll help support you. We're supporting what you want to do. And I guarantee there will be Black stories in that film festival. So it's about like getting, you know, like you're saying, us telling our own stories. Did you guys see that short that won the Oscar last year?
I did. In fact, I work for the company that made it.
No.
Yes.
Indeed.
Oh my God. Man,
I feel like I queued you up, but I did not. We did not talk about that before.
It inspired me. Okay, no, it really inspired me when I saw that short. It's called Hair Love, right?
Love.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that is so powerful. I want to create
great.
a platform for more people to be able to tell their stories, man. I just got to say major props to you guys. That was a great
Thank you.
story. And, you know, I had no clue that you worked on that. That's,
I have to say, I didn't work on that project. I arrived at the company maybe just as they were finishing or just after they had finished it. So, but so many people at the company worked on that and poured time and talent and heart and soul into it. So it's a wonderful short, and I'm glad to be associated with the company that created it. Yeah, absolutely. Chi, you have anything to share in terms of, trying to, are there projects that you want to do, or are there projects that you have in mind that can help push the needle in terms of equality and diversity and making that change?
I just want to tell diverse stories that feel authentic. When I watched The Fresh Prince and like The Cosby Show, they are great shows for the Black community, but they don't represent the Black life. It's showing a kid that is in a messed up situation, and he goes to this high class situation that's normally occupied by white people, and now he gets to navigate life that way. That's not how I grew up. That's not how most of my Black friends grew up. I know there are certain people that have grown up that way, but that's a 1%. But then when I watch a show like Everybody Hates Chris, like, I know it's a comedy, but it still like shows the Black life for what it is, and it doesn't make it seem like, oh, these kids are just doing bad things in the ghetto. It's, it's kind of like, all right, people in the ghetto have a story to tell as well, and their stories are a lot more interesting than most folks, because like they had to fight for a lot more. You know what I mean? Like their story had a lot more spice. Like, I feel like people in the 1% stories it's like bland. It's like yogurt with no flavor, you know?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that I think looking to the future, I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, is the idea that hopefully in the future there isn't just one Black story that can be told. That there is a multitude. We've all heard it before. We probably all said it before. Black people are not a monolith, and so part of what will be refreshing in the future is not feeling like, well, this is the one Black story we got to tell, and having a diverse group of stories, people that grew up in the ghetto and people that grew up in middle-class homes, people that are scientists and people that are bus drivers. There is a wealth of experience to the Black experience in America, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, just a diverse
like what I think is so wonderful for me is I can go to the movie theaters pre-pandemic, of course, and I can watch a Tyler Perry movie, right? And a Tyler Perry movie is inherently Black, but like I think what's amazing about like the way things are going, although times are rough, is that I can also go to the movie theaters and watch a Jordan Peele movie. I wouldn't say a Jordan Peele movie is inherently Black, but it is coming from the Black perspective. And I think that's important, that like we're able to expand these stories now and tell more diverse stuff.
I just want to follow up with that. I'm curious what for you, and I want to get to you, Caress. I know you've got things to share, but I just wanted to follow up with that thought. For you, what is it? And I can open it up to everyone. What is it that makes a film or a project or a bit of animation inherently Black? Chief, for you, what would that be?
Great question.
I think it's the little things you see when you're watching whatever it is. So it's the way that they speak, right? When I watch The Proud Family, like The Proud Family is completely different than Phineas and Ferb. Like Phineas and Ferb are not celebrating Kwanzaa, but Penny Proud is.
Right.
And like, I don't celebrate Kwanzaa personally, but it's important for me to know about Black culture. And like Phineas and Ferb isn't going to make a conservative effort to do something like that. So I would consider that inherently Black. Or like, if you're watching a movie like A Friday, right? It's like, that is a movie that is in the ghetto. And it's not showing people they are doing bad things in the movie Friday. They are. But, at the end of the day, like they have their own story. And their story is something that resonates with the Black community. Like, somebody got fired from their job for no reason, marijuana. Like those are things that like, in that community of the Black community in California for Friday, for example, like that for them is synonymous with them. I think things like that, or I look for key things throughout movies and TV shows that are like, okay, I couldn't see that in Sunny with a Chance or Lizzie McGuire. I can only see that in the Proud Family.
Caress, you have any thoughts to follow up?
Yeah, I'd basically agree with Chi. It's just content that's made by Black people or has like a Black perspective in it. Because the majority of time, if you're watching something and there's like a specific scene where something happens, like in Hair Love, what I really loved is that I think there's a part of it where I think the dad is like watching a hair video and he tries to like do it for his daughter and it doesn't work. And then he goes to like the mom's video and then it works because it's for her hair texture. And I was just like, that's happened to me before, where I've watched a YouTube video for a hair texture that wasn't mine and the technique they gave did not work. And, you know, that's really frustrating when, you know, most people in America think that hair care advice and hair care maintenance is, you know, it's standard. It's standard. You could walk into like a barber shop anywhere or a hair salon anywhere and get your hair done. I mean, I once went to like this like white hair school when I was like a child. I don't know why my mom took me there, but
I'm nervous
like
already. I'm
yeah,
very
no,
nervous.
it was and I walked in and they were befuddled. They didn't know what to do with my hair. And so, you know, that's like a very common experience for me where it's like, okay, I can't walk in somewhere and get my hair done unless I know there is a Black stylist there who knows how to work with Black hair. So yeah, it's just things like that in entertainment content that I love to see in Hair Love and something animated, where you just know there's like a scene or a line set or a moment where it's very clear, like, oh, this came from something only a Black person experienced and could speak on.
And so do you feel, and I'll open this up to all of you, do you feel that authentic Black stories can be told by people who aren't Black? Or do you feel like stories that aren't about Black characters can be told authentically by Black filmmakers? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just asking a question.
Can I actually, I'm sorry, I just want to say this before I lose the thought. I actually think Black people are better at making like authentically non-Black stories than the other way around. Because as Black people, we're raised to assimilate into this culture. So in a lot of ways, we know how to navigate this like culture, you know, of whiteness better than some white people in a way. You know, it's just like our understanding of it is so like complex and basically like rigorous and constant. I honestly do feel like we can create content that's not Black content, but it feels authentic. And I feel like that's the reason why. Now, on the flip side, I think non-Black people or like white people, they can sometimes get really close to it, especially if they were raised in a Black environment. But I would disagree that in general that a non-Black person couldn't necessarily make something that's authentically Black.
For me, I think the key is maybe a shared experience, a lived experience, and the willingness to understand something that is not directly from you. And I think, touching on what you said, because of the wider world in which we live, Black Americans, and to a large extent Black people the world over, have to understand how to navigate a world that's different. Whereas it's not something that inherently comes from you know, a white perspective or other people's perspective. I do think that if there's a filmmaker or an individual that takes the time and takes the effort and communes with and works with other people, I think I think there's a way to tell authentic stories, but I think you have to be inclusive with those. You know, I think we were talking a little bit about Watchmen earlier, and this is just, you know, this is just my opinion, but you know, the showrunner for that is Damon Lindelof. He's not he's not black, but that felt like a very authentically black story, in part because he worked at it and he brought people in to that story, and I think it's harder, but I think it is possible. I don't think it's as easy, because for the reasons that you said, I think, you know,
it's possible. I think it's possible. It's just not, it wouldn't be as good. I think when it's told by the authentic perspective of
Sure,
someone who's
absolutely.
black, or even someone who's trans, right? You know, trans, or like, why not go to the source?
Absolutely.
Color Purple was,
Absolutely.
I think Color Purple was a really good movie. Would it have been better? You know, like, you know, I don't know. What
Possibly.
that's the
Yeah.
that's the big question. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
also too, I will say this is that, what is black, right? What is a black story? And for years,
Absolutely.
people told me, you don't sound black. You do not sound black. And that
Again, I see the collective head nods.
you don't sound black. You ain't black. And you know, that's the thing. And you guys, I know we all understand this. Being black is not just one thing. It doesn't mean you talk this way. That doesn't necessarily mean you're black. I mean, that to me, that does not mean black. Because for years, Hollywood has said, oh, well, you know, if you're black, you have to sound this way. You got to be this way in order, you know what I mean? So no, but I just want to say one more thing that I kind of said earlier that it's just keep coming up to me now, is that what I really feel that's important, that's missing, is the Black woman's perspective. I really feel that's missing. And when it's done, it's so refreshing and so good. And it feels like, and it's across the board. I know we're talking about animation, but I want to point out films. Regina King has been an amazing actress for years. And she's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's so many Black actresses that, you know, Kerry Washington and you know, Gabrielle Union, and there's so many that for years they've been working in the industry, and they can't get good parts. It's a struggle to get good parts. So and also in the music industry, that's another thing. I'm like, where are the Black female singers? That just kills me, because I remember when there was a Whitney. I remember when there was a Janet. I remember when there were these women that were amazing, and now it's like, where are they? There, you know, there's Beyonce. Okay, great, but we need more. There's why can't there be room for many different types of female Black singers and actresses? And so that's just something that's been on my mind for years. So this is a forum we're talking about it, so I just want to bring it up. I do really feel that's an important, and I think that's why, another thing why Hair Love was so beautiful, because it was this little girl's perspective. Another funny movie, like the other side of that, is called Bad Hair, and I just watched it the other day, and it's a horror film about weaves. It's about hair. It's about,
I'm actually looking forward to seeing that.
Okay, I won't say anything else, but
so, well, Caress, why don't you speak a little bit? You know, we touched on it a little bit earlier, and I know, you know, just from your own personal work, that those are some of the things that you deal with in your own films. Talk to us about your experience and the things that you want to speak about in your own work.
Yeah, so my thesis film is called Mothership Opera, which is about a spaceship where an opera singer is like she's basically a slave owner, and it's revealed at the end that all of the Black people on the ship were actually this advanced alien race that had been sort of under this sort of spell that eventually gets broken. And it's a funk opera musical, I call it. But I basically,
pretty amazing.
I basically wanted to just explore this idea of representing Black people in animation, really anything at all, and in a like a different way, because like we don't really get a lot of representations of Black people that are like fantastical or in fantasy settings. I've noticed, which is really frustrating. The main characters in my thesis film are two Black women. I just think for the entertainment industry as a whole, and I mean it goes for animation too. I don't think people know what to think of and do with Black women, because it's like, yeah, it's because it's like the stereotype that surrounds us, or the wide array of stereotypes that are focused on Black women. They're so specific. At least in my experience growing up and working, regardless whether it's in animation or not in animation, people seem to get really confused around me, I've noticed, because like I guess just the way I speak and how I act goes against their expectations, and it happens really often to the point where it's really annoying. So yeah, it's just like the stereotypes that surround us are so solidified or like unchanging in our media. I feel like there's like a lack of imagination outside of Black creators as to what to even do with Black women, because it's almost like they don't know what Black women are. It's very strange. It's very uncomfortable. Yeah, because it's like, oh, are Black women white women but different? You know, it's like a strange thing where it's like there are these weird qualifiers around Black women. It's like a strange orbit of confusion, and at the center are the stereotypes, just like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I can rely on this sassy Black woman. Fine, I understand that. Black woman who's not sassy, you know, that's more uncomfortable for people to deal with, I've noticed. So that carries over into content creation and representations. I definitely want to see more Black women represented in animation. Off the top of my head, but I'm thinking of Princess and the Frog, which that's a discussion for another time. But it's you know, there's a severe lack of us, and I hope with there being more Black women getting into animation, maybe that can change. But yeah, it's almost like we don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets back to some of what we were talking about earlier, in that, you know, when the people making the decisions and the people making the projects and creatively in charge of those projects are a more diverse group, then we'll get more diverse stories. When we have more Black women in the industry, you know, moving up the ranks and making decisions and creatively making things, creating things, then we will have more of those Black stories. And I hope we can get there fast, you know, because there are some wonderful stories to tell. And I think, you know, you're a prime example of someone who's taken their own experience and made it into you know, a wonderful short. So you're welcome. Well, let's see. We've got some questions, but I did want to talk about, you know, we've talked sort of about, you know, some of the trials and tribulations of what it's like to be a person of color, African American, in the animation industry. I'm wondering if you guys could touch on some of the wonderful experiences that you've had. Are there wonderful experiences that you've had? I guess I should ask, and maybe you could share some of those.
I've had wonderful opportunities working on just amazing films and doing, I worked on Oz the Great and Powerful, and that was such a great film. It was a great introduction sequence that I worked on. And I've worked on stuff with Disney. So, you know, I've worked on like lots of cool projects that I love, but I really do feel, guys, honestly, this is my honest opinion, that is great, but it doesn't even hold a candle to the work that I do where I'm teaching, or I am actually like helping someone in that way. I find that just way like 100 times more rewarding. I feel like the work that I've done, that I do in Hollywood and still do work in that, I feel like what I try to do is bring that back, like bring that into my classroom and bring that into, you know, speaking engagements and talking with people and doing that kind of thing. So that's honestly like, that's what I love. I mean, that's, and I feel like that is that's an answer. That it actually is an answer to a lot of the things we're talking about, because it's about me helping other people, you know, bringing them up. I just really quick, I did a workshop in Mississippi for the Jackson teenagers, and it was a branding workshop. And it was so cool working with those teenagers, because I realized that many of them, and we're talking about, this is the poorest part of the Delta. You know, some of them don't even have computers at home. And I was doing this workshop, and I felt like, to me, that is the real work. That's like more important than working on a big budget movie. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I felt like I'm introducing them to things and helping expand their mind, you know, like expanding their minds of what's possible for them. So for me, I really feel that it's like an absolute honor to do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Caress, how about you?
I would say the camaraderie I've cultivated while in animation is probably the best part, because I've befriended a lot of people of color, especially women, and they've just been so helpful for me getting through really difficult times while working. It's just being able to relate with them, you know, on a level I couldn't do with anyone else. It's just like really rewarding to basically, you know, like pour into each other, like helpfulness and energy and just like support. The mentorship I've been able to get to has been great. Obviously, Musa has helped me a lot in my career. I really hope that mentorship among like people of color kind of improves, though, because it's been pretty limited for me. I really do feel like, at least going off of what David said, having more like people of color in the positions of like educators would actually be really helpful for dealing with a lot of these issues of representation we're having in this industry. But yeah, I'd just say the people I've met with who have a background where we have a lot of things we can relate about in terms of like our history and our race, our ethnicity, has been really powerful for me. I think better just to understand sort of my placement in this industry. Because at least when I started out, it kind of felt like I was floating in the ether alone, because I had a lot of feelings. I felt like I wasn't seeing it being reflected from anyone else I was working with. It seemed like there was this like animation paradigm that everyone else seemed to be experiencing, where it's like, oh, you get really good, and you get a really good job, and then you become a rock star on that job, and that's what it means to be a good animator. And it's like like it can be so much more complex when you're a woman, when you're Black, and you're working on things where you don't see yourself being represented. That whole experience becomes like something that's, you know, more nuanced, more complex. And so definitely meeting other people who can relate to me has been really great.
That's great. That's great to hear. Chi, how about you?
So I think the best thing about being at like Disney, right, and being an African American is that there's not too many of us. And so because there's not too many of us, like when you see one another, it's kind of like, oh, it's amazing. And like, you know, we have a lot of groups out within the Walt Disney Company, just where we can just be together and be a community. And like, that's amazing to me, because people will always say, oh, I'm a safe space, you can talk to me, but like, that's not how it always is. And I feel more comfortable talking to somebody that looks like me and like understands the same issues that I'm going through, as opposed to just talking to a random person that has no idea what mine is. And I think that the community at Disney has been great for that, like within uplifting one another and just pushing us to be the best we could possibly be.
Oh, that's great. That's really great to hear. Well, I do want to get to some of these questions. We've got a lot of questions here. The last question that I have before we jump into those is, what advice would you all give to a young person, or maybe a person of color who is looking to break into animation? What can they do? What are some resources that you would like to share with them? And I'll start with you, Chi.
I think the big thing is following your dreams. Like along the line of your journey, you'll find things that you've seen like it correlates with your dream, and you think that's what it is, and you'll stop. Like, that's not what to do. Like, keep shooting for the stars. And like, if you shoot for the stars, you'll be able to accomplish anything. I think that's the biggest thing I would tell people of color. It's hard for us to get our foot in the door, and sometimes it can be a little bit discouraging. But like, even though we have to work harder than everybody else, like, just do it. Because like right now, I feel like I have so many skills that like other people don't have, just because I have to work so much hard to get them, just to get my foot in the door. So I would say continue to reach for the stars, and like being on LinkedIn and just reaching out to people, but being respectful about it. I think that's the key thing. That's big, networking, expanding your horizon.
That's great. That's great. David?
I would say to anyone that's out there that is looking to start is to just realize that you came fully loaded. You came to this planet fully loaded. You're not lacking anything. You have it all inside of you. And I would say if you want to start making films, just start doing it. Just start doing it. I don't think you need to school is great and definitely go to school, but just start. There are so many resources on YouTube. And, I was watching Ava DuVernay. She was at Adobe Max, and she said she gets asked that question. So I actually kind of stole that from Ava. She said, that's what she would say. Just start making the film. Just start. It's not going to be perfect. It's okay. You'll make mistakes and you'll learn from that, and you keep going. And the other thing I would say, get a mentor. Like ask for help. And that's what I'm creating a film festival right now. I have never created a film festival before, y'all. Like, I'm doing it. I'm like, I guess I'll just learn as I go along. I'll find allies. Hey, get those allies. So yeah, I would say definitely get help. Ask for mentorship.
That's great. Caress, I'll leave the same question to you as well to finish up.
I think what helped me the best was just befriending a lot of people in school. I think that's something that's really overlooked in animation, because it's really easy to slip into this idea that you're a lone wolf, to really get focused on like just focusing on your abilities and your skill set. And I think that's a huge mistake. I mean, pretty much every job I got was through a recommendation or because someone knew me or heard of me, and they just randomly reached out to me out of the blue. That could also be something that's race related. I'm not sure that I can't just apply to a job and get it. No, it's really important to like network. I mean, for a lot of people, especially introverted people like me, networking is like a 4-letter word, but like creating genuine relationships with people you go to school with is really important, especially in animation, just because this industry is so small. Like, everyone knows each other and everyone's going to see each other at least twice in passing. So yeah, it's just so important to just build these relationships, and not even necessarily with the intent of like getting a job, because it's really obvious when you reach out to someone and they just want to funnel information out of you for their own purpose, which is like, that's not a bad thing to want, it's like necessary. But at the same time, it's like, just forge genuine friendships with people, and people remember that. They're just like, oh, that cool person I like met, or cool person I hung out with a few times, they mentioned they do this thing. Let me hand over their email to you. It's like, it's honestly as simple as that. Just making friends, especially in school, because that's going to be one of the few times you're surrounded with other people who think like you before you actually enter the job force, and it's just going to be less competitive in school to a degree before you're like out in an actual studio space, because then it's just like the culture is a little different, because it's like you're not just dealing with people who want to work here, you're dealing with people who've worked here a long time, may have a certain status, like there may be certain cliques that you don't understand when you first enter the space. So I just think school is really important to forge a lot of those relationships.
I agree, and I also think this is a good place to network. So
yes.
I'm going to give my information. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm here for you. So this is part of networking. You just met some really good people in the industry, y'all. Anybody that's watching.
Absolutely.
I'd like to also add that I think it's important to make yourself memorable wherever you are. That's like one of the other biggest advice I'd give you. So, or I'd give a kid, like, if I'm meeting somebody or I'm having a coffee with or a LinkedIn message, I want them to remember me. I know, like, for me growing up and trying to like make it in this industry, I was enthusiastic with puppets. And it was kind of like, I'm the big, tall, black guy that's a basketball player, but he loves puppets. Like, so I feel like that generates the question in somebody's head, what's his story? And I feel like that's the reality of what Hollywood is. People want to know your story, and like if they like your story and if it's interesting enough, they want to take a chance on it. So like it's always important to be memorable and find a way to earn somebody's respect.
Absolutely.
And so I also want to say I have an online platform. I have a learning platform. So anyone that wants to take classes, wants to learn about animation, you can go to www.daviddodds.net, and you can start taking, like, I do classes, I do mentorships. I'm saying that because I've done a lot of these, and I know sometimes there's people out there that are saying, what's a mentor? Like, how do I even get a mentor? Like, how do I even do that? So I'm saying that's what I do. And let me know if you and a lot of times people will feel shy about contacting us, but I personally mean it. Like, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I'm saying I will literally, like, for real, like, contact me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can reach out to me. I can't always get back to people right away, but
yeah, I would say the same thing, only because
just be patient about it. There's a lot going on, and I both teach and have a full-time job. So, but I'm always happy to help people. So please reach out, LinkedIn or my website, or you can probably just Google me and find me my unique name. So. Well, I do want to get to, we've just got a few minutes left, so I want to get to some of these questions. People have been putting in some really interesting questions, so I'll try to get through as many as we can. So maybe we can, this will be a rapid fire round of questions for folks from folks. Question here about did you guys watch Static Shock at all, and what you thought about that in terms of bringing, a superhero to a larger audience, Black superhero to a larger audience.
I liked the show. It was a great show.
Yeah.
I don't really have I haven't seen the show in a while, but
right.
Like when I watched the show, it was cool. Like I thought Static Shock was cool. I wanted to be him when I was younger. So obviously it was doing its job. So yeah, I like Static Shock. It was a great show.
Great. Let's see here. Question, there's a couple of sort of related questions about representation and diversity, and when those characters are human or not human, and how that may play a role. I know we touched a little bit on Princess and the Frog. Do you guys feel like diversity and inclusion representation can be applied when characters are not human, or do they have to be human? And what do you think about that sort of trend of, there seems to be a lot of Black characters that get transformed into something else rather than just being people. Curious if you guys had any thoughts about that.
I have a lot of thoughts about that, but go for it,
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say right off the bat, we just need more representations of Black people where we're people. I mean, it just needs to happen. It's it's strange how often we're turned into animals. I honestly don't think it's nefarious, but I do think it's like this subconscious sort of understanding of like race and being like, oh, race should be a metaphor in media. Therefore, someone should be turned into like an animal, and that'll be the way I can like discuss race in a way that's palatable to everyone. You know, I feel like that's like a trope, and they take Black people to use that trope because it's like, oh, Black people, that's a topic of race and racism. We'll turn them into animals and talk about race, and it's obviously a very like non-Black way of dealing with race issues and representing them. So yeah, it's a type of storytelling I don't think benefits Black people in the long run. And I feel like it's a type of storytelling that doesn't really come from Black people.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
I've got a couple of questions. I actually have some questions from some friends on here. Hi, Stephanie, Linda, John. Curious, you know, about your experiences. How encouraged were you from your family or people you grew up with to enter into the arts? I am very fortunate in that my father is an artist and a professor of art, and so both of my parents always encouraged me in my pursuits of animation. But I'm curious if that was different for you. I know sometimes it can be there's a need or a want for people to enter, you know, other professions for fear of being a starving artist. I'm curious, have any of you had that experience, or yeah, anything you can share about that?
I never did. I never had any kind of negative suggestions, you know, from my family saying that's not a real job. I think my family, I could do something that they couldn't do. So I think there was a bit of like respect. So I felt, and now other areas in my growing up, I didn't feel that respect, but I did feel it with art. I did feel like they were like, okay, we're going to leave you alone with that, because that is something special right there, you know? But I do, having said that though, I will say about my family that I couldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for the family that I had. So I just think that it's because of them that I get to be where I'm at. And I'm grateful for that, because I used to feel like it was in spite of that. So I'm grateful for where I came from. And I always felt there was something instilled that I had greatness inside of me. And so that I feel like is the thing that really helped carry me through a lot of situations where I was the only one. And people would say, oh, you can't get a job as an animator. There's no Black people in that. I'm like, I have greatness inside of me.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Question about Caressa's thesis film. Is that available for people to take a look at online?
It is on Vimeo. If you just Google my name and Mothership Opera, it should come up.
Fantastic.
I want to look it up.
It's great. It's a great one. Let me see here. A bunch of questions here. Are there any resources or anything that people can do if they want to learn more about representation and Black experience? Are there any things that you feel would be helpful in terms of people in the animation world reaching out and looking into? I mean, I
think
watching things like this.
Watching things like this. And I think that it's, I feel like can I just be honest? I feel like we've given so much over the years. Like we have outlined for years the Black experience and this micro, you know, like we've said so much. I think the key is that the real key, read that book, White Fragility, because it's not about us. It's not about us educating you on the Black experience. It's about you looking within and why you feel the need to label us, to label this thing called race. Race is a white invention. It's something that white people say and white people have used. So that's what I would say, is to do that inner work within. Get the book, White Fragility, and it will really it'll open your mind. It will, it'll, you know.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm curious if, let me see if there's maybe one more question here. Or if any of you guys have any final words that you want to share with our viewing audience. We got 4 minutes left. Anyone?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I just want to say
jump in.
This has been a blast. Like, this is such an unusual conversation to have. And I think we could have so many more of them. And I love having a panel of other Black professionals, Black artists. And, you know, it just makes me see, you know, we're so diverse. We're so diverse. There's so many different stories. And I think now more than ever, one of the things that I realize is that, especially with Black men, I find that I'm finding more and more now that there is some division. There's some things that have happened recently where I start to see, oh my gosh, like we're Black, but we're not all the same. Like, for people to be like, I'm not going to vote, I just don't understand that. And I have actual brothers, I have family members that are like, I'm not voting. I don't understand that. And I think maybe having more conversations like this, you know, like, it would be very helpful, you know, just as a person of color, you know, and that's a whole other issue. I know that, but I think that's a very important thing, because I realize that more and more lately, I feel like we've gotten so, we can get so like compartmentalized and kind of fractioned off. And I'm seeing more, it's so important now to be able to really communicate and talk to each other. And for people to feel that they're actually not going to vote, that just, I'm telling you, it keeps me up at night. I don't understand it. I really
Absolutely.
don't. And
Me
these
too.
are like literally brothers of mine. These are my own family. They're like, they're not going to do anything for me. They are not going to do nothing for Black people. I'm like, what? So the alternative is to literally not vote? I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't understand that either. I want to, again, encourage everyone who's watching, if you believe in diversity and inclusion, please make your voices heard. And one of the best ways to do that is to vote. So I think that's about it. I want to thank our guests, Caress, David, and Chi, for being here. This is a pleasure for me to be a part of this as the moderator. And, you know, I think this really is, conversations like this are very important. Conversations like this are one of the many things that we can do to help make the change, to help push the industry forward, to help make the world a better place and more equitable, and have more, you know, representation matters so much. And I think, you know, programs like this, conversations like this, I hope that they continue. I hope they continue beyond our current political climate. I hope that, you know, people will take the time to think and learn and listen to Black voices and all kinds of voices, Latinx voices and queer voices, because, you know, representation and inclusion matters, and everybody has a value. And when you see that in an art form that you love, it really can help make the world a better place. So I guess, you know, thank you guys for being a part of this. I was really excited to be a part of this. I hope we can continue conversations like this. I hope that all of us stay in touch. Obviously, I know Caress, but I hope to keep in touch with you, David and Chi. It's Absolutely. A small world, and this has been a great experience for me. So
you've been great too, Musa.
Oh, thank you.
You've been great, Musa. Great job. Great
thank
moderator.
You so much. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I guess that's about it. Hubert's back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Musa, Caress, Chi, and David for volunteering your time to the library and sharing your experience and your hopes with us tonight. This is, you did exactly what we had hoped this program would do. And so I appreciate that so much.
That's great.
My thanks to all of you for attending tonight and for your thoughtful questions. Thanks to my colleague Wynn Langer, who suggested this program as a subject for Burbank Reads and wrote our proposal. My thanks to Lisa Mann of the animation department at USC for help in putting the panel together, and to Mindy Johnson of Cal Arts Animation for helping us get the word out. Special thanks to Frank Gladstone of ASIFA Hollywood and Alexi Drosu of the Animation Guild. My thanks to everyone who helped to get a word out on this program. Last but not least, Lisa Paredes of My Burbank for her fine preview of the event. Thanks for all of you to responding and helping create that. The enthusiasm of the animation community for this event was simply wonderful, and the library is very grateful. When you leave this evening, you'll be redirected to an evaluation form. We would really appreciate it if you'd fill this out. One question will ask you what ideas you have for actions the library, the city of Burbank, or individuals or groups in Burbank could take to continue improving racial equity. And please share your ideas, or if you think of one later, you can contribute thoughts on our website. Thank you all again, and have a good evening. Great job, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.